Would you train for back-to-back Disney races even with an ankle sprain? Most people would say probably not. However, I'm not most people, and today I'm going to tell you why. My husband and I previously did Dopey earlier this year, and now we are getting ready to do our Coast to Coast Challenge by doing the Chills and Thrills Challenge in Disneyland in September. And after completing the Dopey and being quite sure that we were never going to do this again, a lot of people have a lot of questions as to why. So today we're going to discuss the Coast to Coast Challenge and what it is and why we're doing it, as well as how I have modified my training plan and my training regimen in order to accommodate a lateral ankle sprain that I got 2 months ago. I'm hoping that if you're a runner who's crazy enough to deal with a race like this, as well as dealing with injuries along the way, that this will be helpful as you understand not necessarily my specific case, but my thought pattern behind all of the treatment that I've been doing to prepare, as well as why I feel so motivated to do the Coast to Coast Challenge. I'm Dr. Amy, and we are empowering women with changing bodies to move pain-free. I also hold a PhD in Orthopedic manual physical therapy, which is super helpful when I am dealing with my injuries or my family's injuries. If you have watched any of our Dopey videos, you may know that my husband struggled with a calf issue while we were training for the Dopey Challenge in the first place. Now, through a lot of treatment, we were able to deal with that calf issue, and he was able to complete all 4 races without any problem. So when we decided to do the Coast to Coast Challenge, we were not worried about him having any physical issues. However, a month after we signed up, I fell while I was running one morning in the dark and sprained my ankle. Why did we sign up for this race in the first place? But let's go back to the beginning. What is the Coast to Coast Challenge? The Coast to Coast Challenge that Disney offers. To complete the Coast to Coast Challenge, you need to complete a race that is at least 10 miles on both coasts. Now, it's important to identify the fact that a 10K does not work because that's a 10K. It has to be 10 miles or longer. So either a 10 miler, a half marathon, or a marathon on both coasts, and it needs to be in the same calendar year. For us, about a month after we got home from Dopey, we were recovering still because it takes a while to recover from a race like that. Honestly, initially, we were quite 100% guaranteed convinced that we did not need to do the Coast to Coast Challenge. However, what happened was that I realized that if we were going to do the Coast to Coast Challenge, this was a year to do it because we already had that half marathon and marathon that would qualify for the challenge. All we needed to do was to go down to Disneyland and run a half marathon. And I'll be honest, it wasn't so much that we feel like we need the medal now. The question we were asking ourselves was, would we regret not doing this in 5 years? I don't know how I'll feel about this in 5 years. In 5 years, I may think it's crazy that we went ahead and did this. However, I didn't know. So we decided that we were going to sign up for this challenge. So we didn't have that question in our mind in 5 years. Now, since then, Disney has announced that they are doing more construction at Disneyland, and they will not be doing races after January 2026. So they're going to be suspending races for a while. And last time they did this, it was for 7 years. So after January 2026, the Coast to Coast will not be available, and we don't know when it's going to come back, which made me super happy that we went ahead and signed up for it because, you know, once something's taken away from you, you're going to want it. And we would spend years and years and years being like, well, we want to do this race and we want to get this medal, but we wouldn't be able to do it. And so then it would just taunt us, which means we would be going back to Disney World to do another race at some point in the future. So I'm very glad that we went ahead and signed up for this race because now we will never have to doubt whether or not we should have done it. It's just going to be done. Our other thought was that after doing all the Dopey training, we were in pretty good shape. So having to do the training for the Coast to Coast Challenge wasn't going to be too big of a deal. Now, we are doing the challenge aspect of the Chills and Thrills. So we will be doing the 10K on Saturday, as well as a half marathon on Sunday. But after doing 4 days of running at Dopey, it didn't seem like too big of a deal. And to be honest, Dopey was not a huge stretch for us because we usually are at half marathon shape. So doing a half marathon as our longest run is not really a big stretch because that's what we've been doing for the past 16 years. When you're signing up for a race like this, especially if you've just finished a big race, if that was a really big race for you and it really tapped your body out, you may need to take some time to recover before signing up for another big race. But for us, it's really going back to kind of our base training with a little bit of exploration in there to make sure that our half marathon time is a decent time and really that we're done running before the sun comes up. Last year for the Disneyland half marathon in September, the temperature was over 100 degrees during the day. They actually had to pull people off the course because the aid stations no longer had aid available for people. We live in Washington State, so we don't run in 100-degree weather. So our goal is to be done running before the sun comes up so we don't have to worry about that aspect of the race. Now, I know you're thinking to yourself, well, it can still be really warm. And yes, I understand that it will probably be warmer than we're used to. However, after Disney World, we ran in 40-degree weather and we wore our Washington gear the whole time. So you just never know what's going to happen with the weather. So we sign up for the challenge, and a month later, I sprained my ankle, and I sprained it really, really well. I had all the classic signs. I had the swelling, I had the redness, I had the difficulty walking, I couldn't go up and down stairs normally. Everything that you would expect started to happen. Now, I knew I hadn't broken anything because once the swelling went down a little bit, I was able to do some testing on myself, and it was clear that nothing was actually broken. There was no avulsion, fractures, or anything like that. It was just a really bad ankle sprain. Now, I've outlined my journey through ankle sprain in these videos over here, so we'll include those if that's really specifically what you need help dealing with. But today what I want to talk about is more the mindset and what I have had to do to take care of my body as I get back to my training program. Because you see, we created an entire training program, which is available to you if you're doing one of the challenges at Disney. You can get it simply by emailing concierge, that's CONCIERGE, at pt4eb.com, and we'll go ahead and send that over to you. Now, what we're going to send over to you is the training program that we ideally would use and that my husband is currently using. I have obviously had to modify that training program in response to what my body was able to do. So once I initially started healing from that ankle sprain, the things I was looking for to return to running was stability in my ankle. So that is just a single leg balance. Can I stand on one foot and not have increased pain? The other thing I was looking for was active range of motion. So does my foot move almost normally? Now, it's still a little bit sticky as I'm still finishing up my recovery. However, I basically had full range of motion of my foot. And the last thing is to make sure that all the muscles are engaging properly. So we do that by testing strength to make sure that we have the strength to be able to run. So stability, motion, and strength were the things that I was looking for in my ankle before I returned to running. Now, I will say that I started with walking and I started doing it on the treadmill because I wanted to see what my pace actually was while I was walking, but I would not increase my pace until I was able to walk normally. Now, once I was able to walk at a pretty fast clip, fast enough that the next progression was to start running, I did that on the treadmill as well. And I am super glad that I did because I took that first running step. I had pain that shot up from my ankle all the way up through my spine, and I pushed myself up on the treadmill, took my feet off of it, and took that speed back down to a walking speed. Obviously, I had the stability, the strength, the range of motion. However, my ankle was not healed enough to tolerate running. That's when I had to go back to the drawing board in order to get more of an active recovery. So if you try to get back to your activity and you are having increased pain, you need to take a step back again and figure out what it is you need to do to heal it. So what I ended up doing was using our shockwave system. So we have a radial and a focused shockwave, which actually helps to treat the soft tissues directly, but also the bone. Because what I believe is that I have actually a bony bruise on my ankle that gets irritated when I run. Now, I will tell you that it's not the most comfortable thing to do. However, it has exponentially improved my running ability. I remain off pace for what I am trying to do with my training program. And what that means is last weekend, I was meant to run 12 miles. Instead, I ran 10 miles, which is pretty good. It's a lot further than I've run for a very long time. However, I can't just speed through that and get to that 12-mile mark because my body's just not ready for that. And that was what I've noticed as I returned to those longer distances. I had to start at 6 miles and work my way back up. So if you are recovering from an injury and you can't jump right back into your training program, back it up to what you are able to tolerate and adjust your training program accordingly. Now, if you're using our training program, we have what we call 3 peaks, where we increase the distance at each peak, the final peak being 4 weeks before race day. So what's going to happen is I'm going to end up kind of missing that first peak. I'm just going to go straight up to that second peak and then the third one while I'm training. But it's important to listen to your body. You need to see what's going on while you run as well as what happens after you run. So while I run, I see how am I feeling, how's everything doing. Sometimes I occasionally have to do some walking breaks in order to get my ankle moving better because it just gets stiff sometimes while I'm running. And afterwards, I'm monitoring for things, particularly the next day, I'm monitoring for swelling or any increased swelling in my ankle. The other thing that I have found to be really helpful for me in my rehabilitation, specifically for an ankle sprain, is swimming. And I think it's because of pushing off the side of the pool that gives me a little bit more strengthening into my ankle. So I have implemented swimming on Fridays instead of a short run. So on the schedule, it says short run on Fridays. Instead, I do that time in the pool. I actually swim, and then that gets things moving better so that long runs are easier to tolerate on Saturdays. Now, of course, that is going to be critical to make sure that I have access to a pool when I'm out in Disneyland, which the place we're staying does have a pool. It's not a great pool for swimming laps, but again, what I really need to work on is that push off. So I'll just have this little pool and I'll just be swimming back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. But that's going to help my ankle move correctly so I can finish those races. The thing that's really important when you're recovering from an injury and getting back to your activity is to avoid really sharp pains. So there can be some stiffness or some irritation that can happen as you get back to your activity. And some of that you may have to work through. It has to be a matter of listening to your body and knowing, is that an okay pain? Is that something I need to kind of push through? Or is that a bad pain that my body is telling me to stop? Please understand, it is critically important that you listen to your body during the recovery process because you don't want to be furthering damage and causing long-term issues during your recovery because you're supposed to be recovering. So if there is a sharp pain, you may need to stop, analyze that pain, see what's causing it, see if you can do something, a stretch or an exercise to help things move better or improve your strength so that then you can continue on with the activity. Or if there's nothing that you can do to solve this problem, maybe you need to take a rest for a day or 2 or 3 in order to get back to it. Because that is also critically important with your healing. However, how you keep moving may have to change. So for me, every day after I do a run in the morning, I need to do a walk in the evening. And sometimes I have to walk the day before I do a run because getting that ankle moving correctly is really important. Now, walking no longer bothers me. It actually makes my ankle feel a lot better. Swimming is the same thing in that it helps my ankle feel a lot better. So I just need to implement those in order to be able to have that maximal movement while I'm running. So consider if you can't get back to your activity yet, is there some aspect of it you can do, or can you do it in a different way that is pain-free and can actually help increase your movement and your strength while you're getting back to your training program? And if you feel like there's nothing I can do that is pain-free movement, I am just stuck, the only thing I can do is rest, and you're beyond a week or two from your injury, sometimes rest is what's indicated a week or two. You need to get that swelling down, you need to get that pain down. That's understandable. But if you're 2 weeks out from your injury and you're like, I literally can't do anything at all, you're definitely going to want to seek help from a manual physical therapist so they can understand if there's something else that's going on with your body, as well as if there's anything that may have predisposed you to this injury in the first place. Now, if you have a fall like I did, there's nothing that predisposed me. It was just a pine cone that I stepped on the wrong way. But for you, if it's an overuse injury in particular, there may have been something that contributed it to the first place. So if you are crazy enough to sign up for the Coast to Coast Challenge, then I definitely recommend you getting our training program. It is really helpful to get you ready to handle the distance, as well as our training program is geared towards people who are running both races. So if that's you, definitely reach out to concierge@pt4eb.com to get your copy of the training program. And if you are trying to get back to running and you are injured, I want to encourage you to listen to your body and really pay attention as you get back to your running, what is happening and what kind of pain you're having. If you're not able to figure out what's going on with your body, you're like, I have all of these signals and I need some help, reach out to a manual physical therapist who will be able to really analyze what's going on with your body in particular and get you the help that your body is asking for. As well as the fact it's sometimes nice just to have someone to bounce ideas off of to see if you're on the right track. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. Don't forget to click subscribe. If you would like to understand more about my progression through my lateral ankle sprain, check out this video over here. And if you like our training program, don't forget to reach out to concierge@pt4eb.com.